can you just give me some context of your experience of Corona, who you are living with, where you're based and everything?
What did you say in the end, in a way of?
Oh, where you are based, where you live.
Yeah. Well, I'm living in Sant Andreu, Barcelona. Well, a neighborhood in Barcelona, and I'm living with two friends that we were lucky, and we recently moved like 2 weeks before Corona started. So yeah, we were looking this way, or I think that we were. And I'm currently not working, not now and not during the quarantine. I had no work. Yeah, I'm not working right now, so just enjoying these new things that life are bringing to us. Yeah.
Cool. And so like during quarantine, what positive aspects of yourself did you discover?
I'm not a very positive person, so this is a tricky question to me. But I think a bit, and maybe I just discovered that, uh, how to say it, like I saw myself always as a person that really needs my space and that I cannot be with other people for so long. And thanks to quarantine, I kind of discovered that this is not true. I don't know, I really enjoyed sharing all the time, like with the people I'm living now. We shared every hour, we eat together every day. So it was a nice experience in this way. And yeah, I discovered I like to share, maybe. I'm not that solitary person. I don't know.
Yeah. We're kind of discovering a family during the period, like having to live so closely together. You form the family in some way.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
cool. And did you ever have any difficult moments, and how did you overcome them?
Well, of course, I have difficult moments. I think it's weird, no, if someone didn't have any difficult moment. Especially, I don't know, I try to avoid watching the news because they were really scaring, and it make bigger this feeling of uncertainty that for me is the worst feeling ever. And I don't know, during these days we felt it like a lot. And this thing for me was, I don't know, the most scary and difficult part, not knowing if someone around me will get ill and die, or I don't know, it was everything. And the way I
What was there?
sorry, I didn't.
Was there any way of you finding certainty? Was it just like talking to yourself positively, or trying to reform your future? Or...
No, as I said, I'm not a positive person, so talking with myself never helps. But as I said, thanks to this sharing, non-stop sharing space, what helped me 100% it was talking with my flatmates and sharing our feelings, and yeah, and just by talking, usually things arrange a bit in the head and the fears go away. It was the way, sharing again.
Yeah. It's kind of like talking with others. It creates a sense of a collective consciousness. Like everybody is bearing this difficulty, and because of that, you can talk to anyone about it, and you can see that you're not alone, even if you're confined. The experiences have been kind of universal, which is nice. Sure. And then, how do you think technology has helped you during confinement?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a bit obvious that, of course, thanks to technology, we could communicate like with family and friends. For me, it was more important family. Like, for instance, my grandmother, she's 90, she lives alone. And when I thought, like, she knows how to use Skype and everything, she's really modern, advanced grandmother. And I don't know, I would have suffered a lot if I didn't have the chance of seeing her like every 2 days and talking with her. And so, yes, I think it was one of the first times that, for me at least, I saw how useful can technology be, like this link between
Yeah,
people and I don't know. My English is a bit
it's fine.
terrible. I hope I'm explaining. If you need me to repeat something, just tell me. I don't know.
I
I'm doing
understand.
my best.
I understand perfectly. It's more the connection is a bit funny, but
Okay.
yeah, I guess in some ways technology was completely necessary. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you can't see family members. For me, I couldn't go back to the UK,
Mm-hmm.
but this kind of carries us. It kind of helped us, through it and not feel completely separated from family and friends. Um, yeah, for me, it was the same thing, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, you didn't notice maybe no a big difference between, or did you? Like you usually talk no with your family or friends through
Yeah,
internet or?
well, I mean, I was going to go back to London,
Ah,
but for like a month, but I wasn't able to. Um,
mm,
so even though I missed them, I was able to, talk on Skype and we were talking very often. So yeah, technology really helps in that way, for sure. Um, and then, how have you left the quarantine universe, and how have you reconnected with reality?
hmm. Yeah, actually, I think I still didn't left the quarantine universe because the people I'm living with, we got so attached that we are still doing everything together. And when we go out, even if we meet with someone else, we are still together. So I don't know. I'm still feeling that I'm a bit in this universe, and also maybe because I don't have job now, it helps. Like I had nothing that break the quarantine and this normality from now. So maybe I hope that soon I can answer this question better. But right now, this is the situation.
I think it's quite a good answer because um, leaving the quarantine universe isn't just destroying and eliminating what happened before. Like I find that I'm going out with my housemates a lot more. Before it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of separate, but now, like, yeah, we leave the house together. We do stuff on the weekends together. So it's, there's certain things we want to take with us that we want to keep alive, for sure. Um, it's not just about forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think yours was a good answer, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
And then, do you think technology is a force for good or something that will make us lose touch with reality?
Hmm. Oof, this is also a tricky question because I don't know, it's the typical paradox, no? Like, where is the reality? It's in technology, it's outside. Like, is these things mixing or I don't know. I tend to be quite what's the word? I tend not to be really like pro technology. But I don't know. In this quarantine, I discovered how useful it can be. Maybe I'm a bit naive sometimes with this. Like I don't know, but I don't know really how to answer because it can. For instance, during quarantine, I saw like of course there's this very good side, no, of connecting people and everything, which is really important for mental health and everything. But also I saw like in social media especially that it was creating like a kind of hysteria of everyone trying to show how good they are or how many things they were doing. And for me this is a bit like the dark part of all these things, that people react a lot and they have to show it, and sometimes these things they don't lead space to reflection or to I don't know, to think a bit about what's going on in your life or in general. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really know how to. Hmm.
So maybe it was people on social media trying to do good things. It's partly just I don't know, like in a time in which we have to be more community based, it's partly a very easy and cheap way to make a gesture of, yeah, like we're all together, like, but it's not really action. It's not really, you know, thinking about the people around you. It's a very cheap shortcut in some way. Yeah, I think there's an element of that. And for sure, like, this interests me a lot is what you said about where is reality? Like, part of our reality is the internet, is virtual reality. And, you know, maybe they're all, you know, valuable in different ways, but at least I am worried about losing the definition of, or the difference between them. And maybe society becoming too socially acceptable to live online all the time. You know, like in Japan, in some kids just live in their house. They don't leave and they play games and you know, because it does give us so much good stuff for our mental health, so much connection, entertainment, information. But it's taking it with us back out, I think, and doing something with that, for sure. So yeah, I think it's a force for good, with understanding, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're quite a positive person. That's good.
And well, yeah, thank you very much for answering the questions. Yeah, like the first thing is just, can you describe, you know, give some context to like where you were and who you were living with and what was happening?
Yeah. So the questions that you've sort of given me, I've tried to tie that into the story as well. So,
cool.
For most of lockdown, I was isolating with my friends in Chorlton. So originally I was on my own in a flat in town with like no green space at all. There was no like balcony or anything. It was just like pretty much like one bedroom, and then the kitchen and the living room. Kitchen and living room were just entwined. So I only really got to see the sky, but I didn't really. You weren't really outside, and you're in the city centre, so getting any green spaces was like really hard to get. You'd have to like go for a proper walk just to get there. But in Chorlton, which is like a suburb of Manchester, it's as soon as you stepped out, it was just like people's gardens and stuff. And even though we were socially distancing, like people were like really friendly. You'd wave to the neighbours and stuff, which is kind of a bit alien in town, in the city centre.
Yeah.
Which was a complete contrast, but it was. I actually had, if I may say, like a really good experience during quarantine.
Well, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I found we got to know our neighbors as well, because you just ignore them normally, and all of a sudden you're in it together. You're kind of talking and
solidarity thing.
Yeah. It's super weird. You realize who's in front of you, basically.
I know.
And so, like, you know, during quarantine, what kind of positive aspects of yourself did you discover?
Well, I learned to like balance work schedule and socializing with friends was kind of, I kind of leaned towards, I tried to be as efficient as possible work, but because I was like let go of my job in January, I had to become basically self-employed. I had to find work myself. So I kind of got frustrated a bit with like loneliness, and like I learned to cope because I was isolating with other people. But whenever I was trying to find work, it was kind of, I was lucky that I already had a name for myself of fixing. So I like fixed decks and music equipment during the lockdown period, and I found it quite rewarding fixing decks and then seeing someone's face being like, "You've actually done me a favor." It was a lot better than like a lot of the people I was isolating with were just working behind a screen all the time, and there was no interaction with any workmates or anything. It was just like they only did like Zoom meetings every now and again.
Yeah, very cold.
Yeah, very cold, and I think they've got used to that aspect of life. Whereas like I'm quite a vocationalist. I like being interacting with other people and not sitting behind a computer screen.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite different, yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of, you discovered like you're looking at all these people behind screens and enjoying this kind of
Yeah. I
analog.
was kind of like the voyeur of other people's work.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, yeah, was different.
No, exactly. Well, yeah, it must be nice to be using your hands a lot and everything.
Yeah.
For sure. And did you ever have any difficult moments? Like, how did you overcome them?
Well, obviously, as I said to you beforehand, it's being in that flat space on my own was difficult.
How long were you there?
Because like sorry.
How long were you there for?
So basically, I was in Ireland just before the lockdown was declared, and I came back just the day of the lockdown.
Wow.
So yeah, I just, as soon as lockdown happened, I just messaged my friend and I was just like, listen, man, I'm gonna be on my own for 3 months. Would you guys be willing to like let me come and stay with you guys just for like the duration of quarantine? And obviously they were so hospitable and they're like, yeah, completely come. And I was basically there for the whole of quarantine. Only after maybe I moved out of there maybe like 4 weeks ago. So the tail end of quarantine, when things started to get a little bit more stable and Boris Johnson was his speeches were a little less cryptic than they are right now. But as soon as the quarantine sort of started to ease up is whenever I moved away from Chilton. So I was pretty much there for the whole time, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of dodged a bullet basically by finding someone to take you in and give you some community during quarantine. Oh, that's good.
Because as you know, like I'm quite an extroverted person, and dealing with my extroverted personality on my own would have been a struggle. Definitely. I mean, I love entertaining people, but I think the balance between my personality and photography, because photography is a very isolated sort of emotional thing. It's only extroverted whenever you get to show other people your work. It's kind of like you get to discuss it, but it's kind of a very personal thing.
Yeah.
You're in your internal mind. You're thinking, how am I going to compose this photograph? How am I going to try and convey this picture to then tell a story? So
yeah, exactly. And how do you think technology has helped you during confinement?
Well, I stepped away mostly from like the digital aspect of confinement. So like I don't have Facebook, but the only time I would really go on my laptop was to like respond to emails and like customer requests because of like the business that I was trying to run. But like I focused more on the analog and old ways of technology whenever during quarantine for whatever aspect. So like I started the mini business repairing and upgrading analog music equipment. So like turntables, like Technics and DJ mixers. So I learned like through quarantine, I learned like electronic signal flow, and I kind of learned that all aspects of electronics are like modular. So like electricity flows into the machine, then like the transformer steps it down, then into like a power supply, which then splits the electricity into each. It sends electricity to each module. So I approached like fixing the machines from the source of the fault. But then working with machines, I kind of realized that there's kind of like, there's not just one source of any problem. There's numerous aspects that happen for a sequence up to that point. So sourcing a fault within a machine kind of tied towards like my own self-awareness. So it opened my eyes to addressing like issues of life. So like things are resolved sequentially and in steps to address issues and not just straight from like the fundamental problem. But I found that like really enlightening and rewarding. It's kind of like a philosophical aspect of what I was doing work kind of helped me in my mindfulness as well. And like I found that just from like isolation.
So like the interrelated mechanics
Yeah.
of an analog machine, and like
Yeah.
there's no
how I tie that into like my personal life.
Yeah. It's not like the digital where you might have a piece of bad code and you fix it and it's done. It's much more interconnected in that kind of way. No, for sure. So technology only helped you like where it was absolutely necessary, like bringing in work, but it didn't absorb you. Like
it didn't take over. It didn't take over my time in quarantine,
yeah,
which I am very lucky. I think that a lot of people would have found like their whole life was dictated just from viewing social media and trying to get outside of that confinement.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, as a form of escape. In many
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And coming out of confinement, like, what are your goals for the future? Has this changed anything?
Well, I have been lucky, very much so, to have been. Um, I've been re-employed, so I've actually over the past week I've found employment in an engineering firm in Manchester.
Wicked.
But it's like a completely fresh start. It's coming out of quarantine. It's almost like poetic or fairy tale, sort of like coming out of a very difficult time for a lot of people, and then just basically restart my career again. Because it was very difficult for me being made redundant in January, and I was kind of like, oh, I'm panicking. What am I going to do to make money? And then I wasn't made. I wasn't given. What is it that? What was that? I wasn't made redundant or furloughed. I wasn't made furloughed because obviously I didn't have a job. So I was living off basically universal credit. And then I also had to find a new way of actually earning money to basically keep myself going. But yeah, I've just started like I'm hoping to start a new job in the next couple of weeks. But one of the aspects of the job is that I'm going to be training in a different city. So I'm going to be going to Northampton. So I'm going to be basically isolating again, which I'm quite lucky the fact that I've learned from the past 3 months. I'm more prepared to go into like, because obviously in a new city, I don't know anyone. I'm going to be basically staying in a hotel for 3 months, Monday to Friday.
Wow. So
I feel acclimatized.
Yeah, you're learning the skills of loneliness or inability to just go out and connect with people when you want. Like it maybe makes the whole thing has made us a bit more comfortable with ourselves just on our own.
That's a level of something that I've definitely learned. It's kind of like the isolation is almost sometimes necessary to progressing in your career, because I mean the age that we are, we at university we were always socializing. We're in classes with people that we're friends with. Yeah. And then after we'll go to the pub or we'll start socializing. But when it comes to an actual job, you kind of have to really hone in on a certain skill and be behind a computer and be willing to like relinquish any social time. To better your actual career. I think that I'm at a bit of an advantage to a lot of people coming out of university. I've had the experience working on a job before, but the fact that I'm willing to, I basically isolate myself in Northampton to better my career. Something I'm actually looking forward to doing it, you know. Yeah,
well, I mean, that's part of like me being an artist, is it's very solitary, and it's like learning how to forge your own path on your own is scary, like, because you need to kind of comfort yourself and be brave enough to do it and lose a lot of connections and stuff. But it is part of adulthood, you know. So yeah, it's definitely a good thing.
Something I'm definitely finding in myself, obviously, as well. It's I don't come from an artistic background. I come from more of an engineering side of things. I'm more of a mathematician, but I'm trying to better my sort of artistic view in life by taking photographs. Like photographs is my medium of art. I mean, I'm not a skilled painter, or I'm not someone who is studied any fine arts or anything like that. So this is my bridge between the art world and sort of my engineering mind is photography.
Yeah, well, you often need a kind of a counterbalance to you know, whatever you do, for sure. And so like how have you left the quarantine universe, like, and how have you been connecting with reality again?
Well, over the past week here in Manchester, the weather has been sublime, which I can't even, it's been like 30 degrees. I'm sure it's been nice for you in Spain as well, but
it's been hotter.
You're probably used to the heat. It was like 30 degrees heat here just this week. And so my photography is mostly portraits. and like social situations, as we discussed earlier before this. It's kind of just capturing that one moment of emotion in someone's face. So like I try to make it more within nature as possible. So like natural light, and that's what summer usually brings, is just natural light and perfect backdrops and stuff, and like a perfectly composed colors and stuff. It's just being able to come out of quarantine, being able to take photographs of people again is just it's like reinvigorated my passion for photography.
Yeah.
It's like smiles on people's faces, and like there's like positive vibes. It's kind of like darkness that was when the quarantine happened. What it is now is just a complete contrast. I mean, people were like unsure about the start of quarantine, what we were gonna, what it was entailing, how long it was gonna be, what expectations were. But now coming out of the quarantine, it's kind of like people now have like a fresh look. Obviously, people are a bit aware of like social distancing, but it's nice to be able to interact without the medium of a screen like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's when something is missing, you realize what was already there, like, and it's like, wow, like just hugging someone in the street was so normal before, and being able to do it again, it's so much more enjoyable, and we appreciate so much. Like we're so much more stimulated by less stimulation, by very basic things like a conversation in a park, or a handshake or whatever. Like
that is becoming the new sort of like notification, almost, that endorphin rush of like, oh, I got a notification on my Facebook or something. There's something that creates some sort of endorphin of like pleasurable sort of, oh, I mean something now. But actually being able to see someone, maybe not necessarily touch and hug them, but that interaction face to face is going towards normality again. It kind of makes me feel excited. The fact, obviously, it's summer and stuff. It's bringing people together. It really is.
Yeah. I find it much easier to not just connect with people, but want to I want to hear their stories and what they're interested in and everything. Because I didn't realize really there were all these people around me so much before, like who were all interesting. And
like you were talking about your neighbors.
Fun?
Like you were talking about your neighbors, how you got to know them a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. And finding out like one of the neighbors owns like a coffee shop, and how long another neighbor's lived, and kind of just talking a lot, because you have to. It's your only community in many sense, and in the analog, like basically. So it's been nice connecting with people again, for sure.
I completely agree.
And do you think technology is a force for good, or something that will make us lose touch with reality?
Well, so technology sort of helped me realize like my own potential in gaining mindfulness awareness. Obviously, I told you that story about the electricity and how signal flow, and how I tie that into my own mental health almost. But I understand that it might not have been the case for all people that were like isolating. A lot of connection to the outside for them would have been heavily dependent on social media, which I'm lucky that I had the people to isolate with. But I personally withdrew myself from being dependent on getting recognition of my existence by searching through an existential reflection on a screen, if you know what I mean. I didn't want to feel validated by seeing other people's lives. I just kind of wanted to live in the real world, and obviously being in space allowed me to do that. But I feel our generation is heavily dependent on like constant endorphins found doing this. So like there's a really, really, really good speech by our friend Ian O'Reilly. It's called Losing Touch Is Digital Damaging Our Wellbeing. And have you seen it by any chance?
I think I saw him post it on LinkedIn.
Oh, it's fantastic sort of approach to how like today's generation are like constantly trying to get an insightful reach on how to be aware of technology. It can be like counteracting on dependency, but like how social media has a grip on people's lives is it's kind of I just wonder how in 15 years time what is going to happen to like the generation after us. It's kind of like you're seeing a lot of like on transportation, people constantly looking at their phone.
Yeah.
Just trying to gratify something, get that, oh, I mean something.
Yeah.
I'll get
It's not like people,
red number on my phone.
yeah, and it's not like people before the phone just sat there like motionless. They would have been reading books, or thinking about their own life, talking to people, reading a newspaper, like things that in many ways are much more valuable than memes or Candy Crush or these really like you said, kind of dopamine, endorphin and inducing apps. But they don't ever enrich our lives,
No, it's very cute, sort of a cute reward, whereas you get a much better sort of like slow understanding when you actually interact with someone. It's not an instant sort of, oh, there's an endorphin hit sort of thing. Obviously you're not aware of it, like, but coming out of the quarantine, it's just that sort of interaction with people that you were friendly with beforehand. It's just it just helps this coming out of the quarantine a lot better.
Yeah. And maybe then, like, because the internet is so instantaneous. It's so like you get exactly what you want, when you want it, how you want it, so much of the time. And kind of the quarantine has been an exercise in learning patience and learning the reward of kind of long-term gratification. Like, oh, I have to be calm and live with people for like multiple months, and I have to manage that, and I can't just be like, oh, I'm impatient, goodbye, I'm gonna go off or whatever. So like in many senses,
there was no escape.
Yeah. We've been kind of unlearning the impatience that so much of us had, with the internet and everything. It's like, oh, if I want something from somebody, like I need to sit down with them and talk to them and discover who they are and spend much more time kind of trying to connect rather than just getting these dopamine hits in a second. So yeah, for sure.
I mean, whenever one of the tasks that you asked us to do was to get a photograph of someone who we miss and a place that we miss, and obviously my first choice of the place was that photograph of Ireland, the mountains. So like that road, it kind of, I chose that photograph because it was kind of like a metaphor of like that mountain, you can't see beyond it, but there's still beauty in what we can see. And like that road that goes up the mountain, like sometimes you will eventually reach at the top of the mountain, be able to see over the next part, and you'll also see the beauty on that. So I thought it was a very fitting sort of photograph for a metaphor for the isolation of, this is going to get tough, but once you get to the top, you can still see over it. There will be beauty on the other side.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why it made it into the final curation, was it's a powerful, it does kind of represent not only the real world and the tangible, but like forging new paths and climbing mountains and
I'm glad that you saw the choice of it, like.
Yeah. No, it definitely worked very well, for sure, and everything. Cool. And well, I mean, like, thank you so much for taking part and everything.
I found it very enjoyable. Genuinely.
Yeah, I'll just start quite general. Like, how was your experience of the whole thing? Like, could you give me some context?
Super traumatic. What?
Could you give me like some context of where you were and who you were with?
Yeah, I was in Paris because my mom was in Paris as well, because she came to visit me, and then she got stuck, and then she thought there was no point in going back to America because, one, she was super scared of catching the virus, and two, she doesn't actually have any family there, so like she would have just been by herself in an apartment anyway. So me and my boyfriend, we decided to stay in Paris with her in an apartment that she eventually rented. And then it was like a super weird confinement situation, because it was like me, my boyfriend, my mom, and like my best friend, who also happened to be living in Paris, but she had just moved to Paris and she was from Argentina, so she was like completely alone, but like in a tiny like 18 square meter apartment, you know. So we invited her to stay with us because she's like another daughter to my mom. So that was like the kind of special living situation that we had. And yeah, that in Paris.
Nice.
And
yeah,
that was basically the situation.
yeah, it's quite interesting, all the unusual arrangements of people.
Yeah,
That kind of
super unusual.
yeah.
So we kind of had to live like as a little family, you know, like one of us would cook and then another would clean, and then, you know, like we just had like all of these arrangements and just made a little like weird family, because after 2 months together, it's like all the time, every single day. Like it's weird, it's strange.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
yeah, no.
But yeah, okay, that is very strange and interesting. And like,
Yeah.
so what were like the positive aspects? Like, what kind of stuff did you discover about yourself?
Positive aspect is like I got really creative, because at some point you get tired of just like consuming stuff all day, because like if you think about it, in confinement you just consume and consume and consume, because you're like watching a lot of Netflix, like eating a lot of food that maybe you wouldn't eat before, but since you're in the house all the time, you just go to the fridge. And basically just useless stuff. And then at some point I kind of got the urge to just like, okay, like I just want to draw. Like I don't draw well, but I just felt like the sudden urge to just draw every day. And so every day I would draw something and then paint with gouache and stuff. So I discovered that I really love drawing and painting. And
so kind of
also I took a lot of pictures in like empty Paris, which was nice. Another positive aspect was that we had Paris to ourselves, and we were in the 6e, which is a very, very popular neighborhood where there's a lot of bars and always like a lot of people, super touristic. And there was absolutely no one. And we were like 2 blocks away from the Seine, so every day we would go to the Seine and see the water like crystal clear, because there was no pollution. And so like I had never seen it like that, and it's probably, unless there's another confinement, it's never going to be like that again. So I guess that was the positive thing about it.
So it's kind of experiencing Paris is kind of like a virgin space, which is
yeah, like it was annoying to be in Paris because it was a city and we were in the apartment, but then when we got to do walks, it was like Paris all for ourselves.
Yeah. It's like that in Barcelona as well. It's lovely.
Yeah. Oh my God, Barcelona without the tourists, like best city in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's not gonna last long. For sure.
Yeah.
And like, did you ever have any difficult moments, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. Oh my God, I had so much more negative stuff to say than positive. Also positive, I wanted to add something else, is that I think that also it forces you to reflect on what is going on with your life, because normally in your life you're just like going every day, and you never have the time or even the intention to just stop and ask yourself like, wait, is this making me happy? Like, is this really the way that I want to go? And like, people are never going to do that unless they're forced to do that. And this confinement was kind of like a moment where you kind of just sit and reflect, because at some point there's nothing to do. And also it's got this apocalyptic feeling that it's not only like you have the time to think about it, but it's the end of the world. So like, what are you gonna do with these, like what are you gonna do if this happens again? Like, do you want to be stuck like just feeling regret, or like feeling that you're accomplishing stuff even in this situation? Well, anyway, maybe what I said was too long or too complex, but that's how I feel. Also, when you live with people for so long, like it's inevitable that you're gonna fight at some point. And it's also like when you're with someone else, it's kind of a mirror of yourself. And I found out a lot of bad stuff about me and about my personality, which is positive, because then I can change it and I can recognize it. like
Yeah.
the way I treat other people, or you know.
Yeah, that kind of exposure to who you are. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's no stimulation covering up your
yeah.
so yeah, it's an
It was
important.
very raw, like experience, very, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I think for everyone. And how do you think technology helped you during confinement?
The way technology helped me, um, I mean, I don't think it helped me that much because, I mean, yes, in some aspects, like watching movies was, I stopped watching Netflix and I subscribed to this website that is called Mubi, MUBI, and it has only like really good movies, like movies from like, I don't know, like Buñuel or like François Truffaut, like that kind of like really good cinema, or even like modern movies, but that are really good, you know, and not like just like the trash that you find on Netflix and stuff.
Yeah,
And so I also developed like a huge love for cinema, and then I would just like sit and read analysis on the internet. Basically, I just tried to use technology in a way that it was like to learn and to cultivate myself
yeah.
more than just like mind-numbing
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Although of course, like sometimes I would like just search a random YouTube video to like numb my mind or whatever, because it's a lot. But I mainly try to use technology in a way that it would help me grow as a person rather than just,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot of
definitely has those two sides to it.
yeah. There's a lot of like digital culture and film and stuff, which is yeah, so
Yeah,
carrying us through confinement.
yeah,
So there's hundreds and hundreds of hours.
yeah.
And then like coming out of confinement, like what are your goals for the future? Like, has anything changed?
Yeah, yeah. So my goals of the future. I realized that before the confinement, I was doing a lot of stuff because I felt like I had to do that stuff, and now I kind of just want to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And I realized that I don't have to waste time like being with people that I don't have fun with, or doing stuff that isn't making me isn't kind of challenging me or elevating me in some way. Um, and not even by talking to people, but I just realized that I had a lot of people like just kind of like outliers in my life or in my circle of friends that were kind of like weighing me down or just not contributing anything. And just a realization that life is short and you should only do what serves you, and like there's no time for anything else really.
Yeah,
But definitely a realization of how uh how time should be used, kind of. Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, it's kind of when everything is stripped away, like you empty a basket and then you're just putting stuff back in, but leaving stuff out. Because,
yeah,
yeah. In these moments, it's an existential experience, so it's
yeah. It
important.
definitely takes you out of the matrix for a little while.
Yeah,
And then also like the uncertitude and like having no visibility as to when is this gonna end, like how bad is it, like how many people are gonna die and stuff. Also gives you some perspective on like the major also it gave me a lot of perspective on like the major inequalities on earth, because like for example, like Jennifer Lopez used to posted a video of like their son in the house, like going on his like kind of like, I don't know what it's called, but like electrical skate, like just going around, and like they had this huge pool, and it looked like the house from Parasite. And then all of these celebrities just doing videos being like, we're all in this together, and it's like, no bitch, like we are not. Like not even me, I wouldn't say that on my own Instagram, because even though I'm in an apartment, it's still a nice apartment in a nice part of Paris, you know what I mean? And there are people who were in like I know a girl who was in Paris, but like in a 9 square meter tiny apartment, you know, by herself. And like there's a lot of people who went through that, and she didn't even complain once, you know, like. But it's not about that, it's about like just you realize how much the inequalities matter when you're forced to like be stuck in the place that I mean, where you live, it kind of defines your wealth or like your social status, you know.
Yeah.
Like the people in the favelas in Brazil, like it was impossible for them to, and also like the privilege of just being able to wash your hands, you know, like some people in the world can't even do that to protect themselves from the coronavirus, let alone have a nice house to spend the quarantine in. So it's definitely eye-opening, which is a positive but also negative, because it's kind of it's really depressing to be faced with that reality.
But I think maybe in some way the equality in the situation in general exposes inequality for each individual, but it does somehow tie everyone together in some kind of way. And it's wrong for somebody to be like, oh, I live in a big house, it's so difficult. But maybe it does encourage a kind of community understanding and the importance of connecting with people, especially people alone, I think, for sure. And then so how have you like left the quarantine universe, like, and reconnected with reality?
So it happened very quickly, because in Paris it was just like after the deconfinement, like people just didn't care. I don't know if it was like that in Spain, but like French people, like they're not good at following rules in any case. And I mean, I imagine that Spanish people is the same, but yeah, it was kind of like it just never happened out of nowhere, and it was kind of destabilizing, because all of a sudden we were just like walking around, people were throwing parties like the second it was over. And I don't know, I mean, I'm guilty of kind of not caring as well. I mean, I always cared, and I didn't go to parties for a while, but then at some point it's like there's so much uncertainty around the subject, and like there's not a second wave. Why is there not a second wave yet? So there's so many protests and stuff. I don't know. Also, it was funny that from the beginning of the confinement, it was like people making banana bread in their homes and being like, "Stay at home, like we're all in this together." And then at the end, it was like, "Abolish the police, like let's rebuild the system, let's burn it all to the ground."
You said 2
and
weeks.
like so many protests. Yeah, it was like in such little time, everything changed so much, and yeah. But I definitely support the protests and everything. My answer's making no sense. I'm like answering so many things at once.
No, but for example, I think the Black Lives Matter movement, like a lot of people, the first kind of gatherings in Barcelona were protesters, and there was kind of this re-acclimatization to this experience of being with other people. You know, so like
you went to the protest in Barcelona?
Yeah. But it was before it was allowed. It was kind of like coming back into the real world, and it wasn't like that you kind of feel comfortable. It took like a week of exposure to new people and to kind of feel more at home in my environment.
I definitely when I came out of the confinement, my experience of socializing was, it was really hard for me to like kind of put on a mask like I would normally, because when people ask you, oh, how was the confinement, you can be like horrible, like super traumatic, like had a depressive episode, like it's like, no man, like I don't know you that well, like you can't just tell me that like out of nowhere. You're just supposed to say like, yeah, you know, like it was hard, but like it's over, yay. Like you can't really be honest about what your experience was, no matter like how bad it was. And like it was so hard for me to like trying to hide those feelings, but normally I would do like super easily, but like I became a lot more honest and straightforward with people. And like I just didn't care if, you know, people would be weirded out if I said my true feelings. I mean, I wasn't being like rude or anything. I wasn't like, yeah man, you know, but like I would be like, honestly, like it was super tough. Like I don't know about you, but yeah, it was traumatic to be in an apartment for 2 months, even though I was privileged. It was overall not an experience I would like to do again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, maybe that's kind of because everyone's done it. You're able to connect with other people more honestly because
Yeah.
they kind of understand as well, even though every experience is different.
Yeah.
It's like a shared experience for everyone.
Yeah, I think it made a lot of people more vulnerable, also,
mhm.
or be able to expose that vulnerable side. I don't know. Maybe that's just like me, but what do you think?
Well, I think so too. It's a lot of kind of meditation and philosophy on the self, and
Mm-hmm.
I think not being able to hide from that did make everyone more vulnerable. But I think there's a lot of strength in having to express it. Like even though you express your problems, you're not keeping it inside. You're not like confining your emotions anymore. It's much more kind of honest with
Yeah.
yourself, because we haven't been able to hide from them. Before it was like, let's go
Yeah.
out, let's go drinking. I'll distract myself by going on holiday. So I think in many senses it kind of brings a lot more self-awareness to the world, despite it being difficult.